Hi there. Right then, I considered doing a write-up about toilet training, but I think it's quite a complicated little subject. So I thought I'd do a chat instead. Um, the first thing to be aware of here is that your puppy is going to need to go to the toilet, and there's nothing they can do about that. Your puppy needs to eliminate, usually to go for a poo every time they've eaten, usually 1 to 2 hours afterwards, and they need a wee every time they've had a drink, every time they've had a nap, every time they've jiggled themselves about, so they've had a play. And you need to be aware that puppies simply do not have the ability to control their bladder. Their muscle that shuts off the bladder is not as strong as it is when they're a grown-up. And with our babies, human babies, we put them in nappies for this reason, and that's not really an option with a puppy. So what we have to do instead is make sure that if we're not going to be available to allow them access to the place we would prefer for them to go, then we need to make other arrangements. We need to make it possible for them to go in a way that isn't going to upset us. So puppies shouldn't be allowed access to the whole house to begin with, for lots and lots of reasons. But I think a really, really good reason is puppy training, for toilet training. If you limit the space that they're in to places that are easy for you to clean, then it's not going to be as much of an issue for you, the fact that they have to go sometimes when we're not available. Now, one of the really good things about this social isolation for humans is that it means that we can be available when the puppy needs to go. So you need to recognize the signs that your puppy might be imminently about to need to go. The first thing I would say is every single time they've had a nap. So your puppy's going to need to nap for about 20 minutes in every hour. And if you get them as soon as they've woken up and take them out to the spot where you would prefer for them to go, then you're in a much better chance of them learning that's the right place to go. Your pup, wherever they practice going, is where they're going to feel safe to go in the future. And if they're practicing going on carpet, then that's where they're going to prefer to go. This substrate preference is what they call it. If you want your puppy to learn to go in the garden, you need to be making sure they're getting lots of opportunities to go there. And there's some debate about whether or not you should reward with food after they've gone. I personally do like to, as soon as they've finished, as soon as they've squatted and done their thing, I like to get excited and give them something, either a game or a toy. But what you should remember, though, is that going to the toilet is actually self-rewarding. If you've ever had to hold on to your bladder because you've been in a situation where it's not appropriate to go, you know how amazing it is when you finally get the opportunity to go. The other thing is there is no such thing as a naughty dog with regards to this. Your dog is never, ever choosing to go to the toilet in the wrong place. And to be honest, what is wrong? They need to go. That's it. And they will go where it seems to make sense to do so. So if your puppy does eliminate inside the house, that's because they had to. A human analogy that I often use is that you might prefer to use a lavatory and a toilet, but have you ever found yourself caught short in the middle of the woods? And in spite of the fact that that might feel very wrong to you, you do go. You've got no choice. You have to get rid of that sensation. So if you've never ever peed in the woods or peed in a place that you wouldn't normally choose to do so, put your hand up and say, I am the perfect human. But I think everybody has, haven't they? Your puppy will choose a surface to go on which is absorbent and where they feel safe to go. So they're going to be looking for the place that looks like a toilet. If they've been on the carpet, there's very few cleaning products that are going to take the smell away down to the atomic level. And dogs are able to scent at stupidly microscopic levels. So you can use things like odor eliminator or a solution of biological washing powder and surgical spirit. But I think it's much better just not to allow them access unsupervised to carpeted areas, and to recognize what your puppy is going to look like when they need to go. So they'll suddenly stop. They'll suddenly stop and they'll start looking around. And for some puppies, it can be quite hard to spot. Until you really get to know them, it can be quite hard to spot. So I would limit access to carpeted areas to that period immediately after they've already been. So you've got a good chance that they're empty, and then you can bring them into the living room with you for a bit of a play and a cuddle and to hang out. But don't then just leave them in there on their own, because they do need to go so frequently that they're bound to get it wrong. And even if you've got a carpet cleaner, you can end up with carpets that do keep inviting your dog back. The longer you take to get this into your head, the longer it'll take for your puppy to learn to go. Now, the other thing that we find quite difficult as dog owners is getting the dog to ask to go out. So first of all, we need to recognize how they're asking. So different dogs have different ways of trying to indicate to you that they need to go to the place they've been practicing and being paid for to go to the toilet. Tyke was incredibly difficult to recognize. His signal that he needed to go out to go to the toilet was that he would put one back foot on the doorstep of the back door, and I didn't recognize that for a long time. For some puppies, if they really don't seem to be giving you any signals to tell you that they need to go out, or you're not managing to recognize those signals, what you can do is teach them to ring a bell. So just an ordinary parrot bell from a parrot cage, which you can buy in any pet store, and teach your puppy to touch it. And then when they understand that touching it gets a reward, then you can start to hang it off the door and get them to touch it. And then you can start having them, when they touch the bell, they get to go outside for the reward. And eventually, hopefully, the fact that they're outside will start to link with, oh, this is where I go to the toilet, so I might as well go to the toilet while I'm out here. Dodo did give me quite a big drawback from this technique, because I did use this technique to teach him how to ask to go out. He decided that ringing the parrot bell would make me open the door, even when he didn't want to go to the toilet. So I started to restrict access to the parrot bell. I started to remove it as I knew that he was starting to be able to control himself. And having removed the parrot bell, he decided that he could jingle the keys that were in the back door. So I had to remove the keys from the back door. And clever little toad that he is, he decided that he could jingle the keys that were hanging in the front door to get my attention. So we went through a period of having to have no keys hanging in any doors for a while, until he realized that he needed to tell me another way. As it turns out, I'm still not convinced that he knows how to ask, but Twiggy tells me when he needs to go. So that'll be awkward if he hasn't actually learned it. He's definitely clean in the house, and he's now 2 years old. That brings me back to the subject. How long does it take? Well, every puppy is different. Every puppy will take as long as they take. From your point of view, what I would do is not allow free access to the whole house until you're sure your puppy's safe. The next thing, though, is to think about the fact that your puppy might be really well toilet trained and you might have a really good system and you know when they're likely to need to go. But then when adolescence hits, the girls are going to have, coming towards their season, they will need to go more frequently. So they're liable to lose their toilet training at that point. And the boys, when they start having these testosterone surges, are going to potentially start wanting to mark, so you might suddenly find that your toilet training's going backwards. And I think that that's really important to be aware of and to be looking out for, because you may find that you have to go back a few stages and retrain them again. But if it's expected, you can at least be ready for it. Okay, so I hope that gets rid of some of the questions that come along with toilet training. But do feel free to post more questions underneath if you feel that there's something not being answered for you. Right, thank you.